Hello, Internet. This is Sophia. Recently, Bree Miller, a dear friend of mine, brought to my attention a comment that had appeared on one of the posts that she had made on her wall on Facebook. That comment included the following quote, "Bree, the world only has 7,000 years of recorded history. The word history comes from two words, his story. One proof of the 7,000 years hit." I think that he meant to say that, but what he typed is hit, so I'll continue. One proof of the 7,000 years is hit. You will never find a tree older than 6,000 years. The book that most people now called the Bible was called in Hebrew the book. It had no chapters or verses. Wow, this load of is just wrong on so many levels. I already mentioned how I think that the author of this comment meant to type that when he instead typed hit, but really that's as far as I am going to go regarding my criticism of the horrendous grammar of this post. This is because I do not find the level of grammatical skill that the author exhibited in the comment to be particularly relevant. Had he said the exact same things that he said, only with flawless language, it would still be a load of just a nicely worded load of. Inversely, if someone had said sensible things using grammar that is just as bad as that appearing in this comment, or even worse, their lack of grammatical skills would not have detracted from the sensibility of their content. So, instead of dwelling on the grammatical train wreck, I am going to focus on the more relevant problems in what is written here. I also won't discuss the clear ignorance that this guy is displaying with regards to the history of the Bible and the history of language, because frankly, that too is a subject for a whole other video that I may or may not get around to doing at some point in the near future. Instead, I will be focusing on something else stupid that he says here. What I will be focusing on, of all the things that this is saying, is his assertion that because no tree older than 6,000 years has been found, and because the entire recorded history of the Earth is less than 7,000 years, that somehow proves that the entire history of the Earth, not just the recorded history, but the entire history, is no more than 7,000 years. This is obviously a complete load of bull. For starters, yes, a tree older than 7,000 years would, in itself, be proof that the world is older than 7,000 years. Likewise, if we had written historical records that could be confirmed to be over 7,000 years, that would also prove that the world is over 7,000 years old. But this uncle is claiming that the absence of those things proves that the entire history of the world is less than 7,000 years. Granted, what he is saying completely ignores the fact that there is plenty of other stuff that does prove that the world is much older than 7,000 years. However, for a moment, let's forget all that other evidence and focus on this guy's claim that the absence of these two specific things somehow proves that the Earth is less than 7,000 years. Focusing on this claim calls for yet another installment of Fallacy Exposed. And the fallacy here is denying the antecedent. Denying the antecedent is one of the formal fallacies. Basically, with denying the antecedent, if you know that A proves B, and you know that in this case A is not true, you jump to the conclusion that therefore B can't be true. And any argument based on this fallacy is complete bullshit, because just because A proves B does not mean that not A proves not B. So yes, a living tree confirmed to be older than 7,000 years would prove that the world is older than 7,000 years, as would written records confirmed to be over 7,000 years old. But to conclude from that the absence of these things proves that the world is not older than that is a classical example of denying the antecedent. There is a proverb specifically coined in order to caution against this fallacy. No, not a biblical proverb, but a proverb nonetheless. That proverb is as follows: absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. A proverb that is usually correct. The only times that are an exception to this statement are situations when you have a strong reason to expect that if something were true, we would have evidence for it. So the question is, does this situation meet the requirements for that one exception to this general principle? Is there sufficient reason to believe that in a world that is over 7,000 years old, you would find a living tree that is over at least 6,000 years old? Or find written historical records from over 7,000 years ago? The answer to this question? No, not at all. I mean, how old is the oldest living human being? I'm not sure of the exact age, but I know that it is less than 150 years. However, even the who wrote this comment would agree that the world is older than that by more than 1,000 years. Of course, for the mere 7,000 years maximum that this guy admits that the world existed, there were in fact human beings in this world, but most of them are now dead. At the time that the oldest living human being of today was born, there were other human beings who were already around. And at the time that the oldest one of them was born, there were still earlier generations of human beings around, and so forth, until well before the mere 7,000-year max point that this guy espouses. Now, since this is known to be the case with human beings, why can't it be the case with trees as well? I mean, just as human beings are known to be born of other human beings, trees are known to sprout from seedlings, spores, whatnot, of, well, other trees. So there is no reason to assume that the oldest tree currently alive was in fact the first tree ever. This person is completely failing to consider the possibility of entire generations of trees that lived and died before the oldest currently living trees first germinated. As a matter of fact, the discipline of dendrochronology, the study of tree rings that is behind the determination of how old these trees are, is not only able to determine the ages of individual trees at the time of their sampling and/or death. It can do much more than that. By matching up patterns in tree rings of different trees, it can even give us an account of communities of trees across multiple generations. Using such methods, scientists have been able to date bygone generations of trees to well before 7,000 years ago. Some years back, Aaron Ra did a video on this subject. His video is titled, How Dendrochronology Disproves Noah's Flood, and a link is provided to it in the YouTube video description area for this video that you are now watching. In it, he points out that the oldest tree around was already around for centuries at the time that Noah's flood would have taken place according to, well, pretty much any estimate that he, or for that matter I, could find that was provided by biblical literalist scholars. His focus is, of course, on the oldest trees based on their estimated ages. However, his exact same point is true when you look up the ages of the oldest trees based on their confirmed ages. I know that because I looked that up myself on Wikipedia. Granted, he makes only a passing mention of how the cross-comparison of rings from different trees can give you a chronology of a forest that goes way beyond that of any single generation of trees, probably because his point is sufficiently proven by the ages of certain trees that are still alive. However, other sources go a bit deeper into that. I found a paper, for example, about how dendrochronology has been used to date some trees back 11,000 years. Of course, there is then the issue that we have other ways of knowing that there were other trees around even before the time period to which we can assign a to-the-year date with dendrochronology. Not to mention that the author of this comment has not given one argument to address the possibility of there being a time that the world existed without any trees, something which, spoiler alert, we also know in fact was the case. Heck, even according to the biblical literalism that this guy espouses, even according to that load of that's pretty much how the world was until the third day. So really, the fact that the oldest living tree is less than 6,000 years old does absolutely nothing to prove that the Earth isn't older than 7,000 years, because there is no reason to expect that there would have to be a living tree older than that for the world to be that old. But how about recorded history? For starters, let's start by being clear about what is meant by recorded history. It does not mean the entire history of the world that we have any records of. No, it only means the entire history of the world that we have written records of. Various other things, such as tree rings that I discussed, are in fact records, and actually quite reliable records, but they are not written records. So now that that is out of the way, is this guy's claim that the entire recorded history of the world is no more than 7,000 years old true? Well, the first chronologies that we have, according to a Wikipedia article, date back to about 3,500 BCE. That, of course, is an approximate year, but assuming that it was an exact year, that would make it 5,520 years old at the time of the production of this video. There are proto-writings that are from earlier, but yes, it is reasonable to define the dawn of recorded history as being the time of our oldest chronologies. So yes, the recorded history of the world is indeed less than 7,000 years, even less than 6,000 years. However, while it is indeed reasonable to define the creation of the oldest chronologies that we have access to today as the start of recorded history, in order for that to constitute any kind of case for the entire history of the world being no more than 7,000 years, one would have to have a good reason to expect that the creation of written chronologies that survive to this day would have had to happen within the first 1,000 years of the world's existence, or at very least the first 1,500 years. And once again, there is no reason to expect that. For starters, systems of writing developed very gradually. The cuneiform and hieroglyphics of the earliest extant chronologies, as well as the technologies used to create them, were extremely primitive compared to the modern word processing program that I used to prepare the script for this video. However, as primitive as they were compared to said word processor, there were earlier forms of markings made by humans deliberately for the purpose of record keeping that were even more primitive, and a lot of these are dated to well before the 7,000 years ago mark. But I digress. The fact that writing developed so gradually shows that the presence of a writing system in every human society is not something that we can take for granted. It is something that developed over time, and there is no reason to dismiss the idea that just maybe there was a time when there were humans, but none of them up to the task of writing down chronological accounts of history. And this is before we even take into account the possibility of historical chronologies that were written prior to the oldest ones we have, but which have since been lost and never since rediscovered. A possibility that, while not proven to have happened, is also something that the author of this comment has done absolutely nothing to rule out. Not to mention the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there may have been a time when the world existed without any human beings in it. Now, there are also things such as fossils, geological evidence, radiocarbon dating, and other stuff that shows that the claims of young Earth creationists are just plain bull. But I needed to do this video to show how this specific argument for young Earth creationism is, and I think that I have made my case. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please hit the thumbs up button and leave your comment in the comments area below. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and that the bell icon is active so as to increase the chance that you receive notifications when I upload new videos to this channel in the future. Share this video with your friends and everyone else, whether by social media or by whatever other means. Also, I am in the process of rebranding this channel. I have already changed the YouTube channel name from Sophia's Vlog to Red Angel Sophia, and in the near future, I plan to redo my intro and outro to reflect this change as well. So please take note of that too. And until next time, see ya!